From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Here in the State House this week, the first meeting of the Alabama Reentry Study Commission. Led by Bureau of Pardons and Parole Director Cam Ward, the panel is charged with coordinating and streamlining efforts to reduce recidivism. That's defined as formerly incarcerated persons reoffending and going back to prison within 3 years of their release. Ward said Alabama is ranked 25th nationally for its recidivism rate, and the goal is to be in the top 5 by 2030. Things like addiction treatment, mental health care, and job training are key to making sure people don't reoffend.
Everyone will have a role in this. And so I think it's going to take all of us, though, using best practices in our individual fields, our individual agencies, our individual groups to make it work. I do think it's ambitious, but I think with the united support, the bipartisan support we've had over the years on this, I think we can really make a dent in a better, safer society for those who are post-incarceration. And I like to always say this, 95% of everyone in prison eventually comes out. You got to figure out what you want to do. And I know what I want. I want a safe society. And I think we all do, but that doesn't come cheap. That comes with devoting resources and our efforts to making sure they got a job. They're able to fix the underlying issue, stable housing, stable income. And I think we can do this. And I think it's a goal that we all share in common.
States are facing really complex challenges in reentry, from unmet behavioral health needs to agency staffing shortages to many other complex issues around housing and workforce development. But we know that we want to craft goals with bolstering public safety in mind. And you can see that tackling challenges individually or even agency by agency ignores an opportunity to work collaboratively and to incorporate a whole of government approach.
I'll speak with Ward in more detail later in the show. A rare interagency dust-up was finally resolved this week. Earlier this month, Department of Veterans Affairs Commissioner Kent Davis filed an ethics complaint against Department of Mental Health Commissioner Kim Boswell. The complaint alleged that Boswell, along with staff and lobbyists, improperly killed an interagency Veterans Services Agreement because of comments critical of the Mental Health Department made by a Veterans Affairs board member at an opioid settlement meeting. However, reporting by Alabama Daily News showed that the board member in question, John Kilpatrick, never spoke at that meeting. It also showed that Kilpatrick's nonprofit Vets Recover Clinic in Mobile stood to benefit financially from the funds in dispute. This week, Ethics Commission Executive Director Tom Albritton said the complaint had been dismissed. In a letter to Boswell, Albritton said that even if true, the complaints aren't violations of the law. Governor Kay Ivey called the complaint, quote, entirely frivolous, and said the focus should return to serving veterans. This was a strange episode in state government. Ethics complaints are supposed to be secret, much like grand jury proceedings. And in some curious timing, this week also marked the first meeting of a new steering committee charged with developing a plan to address the mental health needs of Alabama veterans. There was no talk of the recent unpleasantness, but rather unity and focus on helping those who have served cope with their unique mental health needs.
I think what we wanted to do is kind of get everyone on the same page. We wanted to make sure everyone understood the legislation, that they kind of understood the federal landscape when it comes to veterans, and then really just getting them oriented to the current landscape. And so our next meeting will really focus more on mental health and substance use specifically and beginning to identify those gaps in services. So we really just wanted to build a good solid foundation, because you have different people from different backgrounds who sort of live in different worlds, and so we were really trying to make sure we laid a really strong foundation for everybody. It's so important to have veterans around the table and everyone talking to each other, and having those individuals who actually have lived experience is extremely important as well. And so it was an exciting day for us, and we're ready to move forward.
Female executives and military leaders gathered in the capital city this week for the Women's Leadership Conference. They shared strategies for excelling in leadership and advancing careers, all while balancing professional and family lives. The event was coordinated by Tech MGM and the Montgomery Chamber of Commerce and featured prominent female military leaders.
Part of this week's events around the Department of the Air Force Information Technology and Cyber Power Conference is to look at so many different areas of not only the community, but of the Department of Defense. One of those areas being women, and our ability to uplift them, to help expose them, and to educate them. So today, for our leadership luncheon, we have a huge, wonderful lineup of speakers from DoD, some that are qualified and experienced in artificial intelligence, and even the CEO of SAIC, a billion-dollar company. So we are really thrilled to have so many women from across the community, across the Department of Defense, and within industry here to share with us.
I've grown up in the Department of Defense, and there's a balance between what we're asked to do professionally and who we are as a person. And so coming into that, you have to have a strong sense of self, right? And we always encourage everyone to bring their authentic self to the table. And being in a male-dominated profession, you have to have that balance of walking that space. And so it's very important that you understand how you fit as a female in that corporate structure.
The annual Cognia Alabama Impact Conference was held this week at Fraser Church. Cognia is a school accreditation organization that helps school districts level up in instruction areas like STEM and competency-based education certification. Governor Kay Ivey spoke to the conference, saying Alabama is making progress toward improving education.
And more directly to our mission here today, I'm thrilled to note that we're on the cusp of having all Alabama public school systems earning district accreditation status. What an achievement this speaks to the quality of Alabama schools. Of all of our efforts to innovate teaching and learning, the Alabama Reading Initiative and the Numeracy Act have been among the biggest drivers in advancing student achievement in public education. The number of third graders reading at grade level has sharply increased thanks to measures taken to focus resources to struggling schools. I'm pleased to note that the new ETF budget also appropriates significant additional funding for both the Alabama Reading Initiative and the Numeracy Act. This is real progress.
Speaking of education progress, some promising news out today from PARCA. That's the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama. Analysis from PARCA shows that English scores among Alabama students jumped significantly with the full implementation of the Alabama Literacy Act. Here in this chart, the English Language Arts category is the middle section. There you can see overall proficiency in English, which includes reading comprehension, has jumped almost 9 percentage points from 47.8% in 2021 to 56% in 2024. This is based off the Alabama Comprehensive Assessment Program, or ALCAP, that all students take each year. According to PARCA, the biggest spike was seen among third graders, who went from 53% proficiency last year to 62% proficiency this year. Again, that's tracking with the full implementation of the Alabama Literacy Act. As you can see, however, proficiency in math and science are still pretty low, but climbing in the right direction. We will get more into these numbers in our next Spotlight on Education episode, which is set to air the third week of September. About 79,000 Alabamians are currently employed by app-based delivery or ride-sharing services, and nearly 1 in 4 residents has worked for them at some point. Most gig-based jobs don't come with traditional insurance and retirement benefits. This week in the State House, a new task force met to study how to potentially get benefits to these Alabamians.
This is important for employees and workers, particularly in the future, be they independent contractors or be they gig workers, as some call them. It's important work for us to review and see the landscape and see if there's a way our state can address this issue even incrementally, bit by bit, because you've got a whole lot of moving parts, whether you're talking about retirement benefits, whether you're talking about insurance, health insurance benefits, or you're talking about workers' comp type benefits or other benefits that may be out there and that may be applicable. And of course, the $64 question is the federal law and the federal issues that come to bear as states try to occupy this space and do things for those workers that it has that are deemed as independent contractors or gig workers.
So parole benefits are going to be an emerging issue that we're going to have to tackle at some point with the rise of people who are taking up more of these gig kind of jobs or app-based jobs. One thing that these 1099 employees don't get is the financial security of traditional benefit practice, of traditional benefit packages that more traditional employers provide. So in this situation, it would offer a menu of benefits that would best serve the consumer or the person who is driving and working in these apps.
As the summer tourism season winds down, Alabama's Gulf Coast is reflecting on another successful year. However, the rise in tourism and new residents present unique challenges for the future. Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders reports.
The pristine sandy beaches and emerald green waters of Alabama's Gulf Coast attracts tens of thousands of tourists each summer. But it's not just the tourism industry that's growing. There's also been a significant increase in full-time residents.
It's been really overwhelming and much faster than we'd ever previously planned or expected.
Robert Kraft was first elected mayor of Gulf Shores in 2008. In the 16 years since, this once small community has experienced a dramatic population boom.
Where our population of the community was around 9,500 people, it's now about 17,000, almost 18,000 people. So the growth has just been overwhelming, similar to what we've grown in tourism visitors because the population capacity has grown. We've created a lot of opportunities for more people to be in town.
Farther down the beach at the Lodge at Gulf State Park, General Manager Bill Bennett notes that the surge in both permanent residents and tourists is unmistakable.
If you look, Gulf State Park is 6,150 acres. We have over 28 miles of hiking and biking trails. And if you look behind me here at the Gulf of Mexico, we have 2.5 miles of pristine Gulf side beaches that will never be developed. We stay very busy.
Bennett attributes the high level of activity not only to the stunning scenery, but also to the unique vibe that distinguishes Alabama's Gulf Coast.
The fact that people are kind and friendly and welcoming here. You know, it used to be the best kept secret, if you will, that the state of Alabama had a beach, 32 miles of pristine coastline. But we're having more and more people come join us down here.
For Mayor Kraft, the challenge is ensuring that the infrastructure of small towns like his can keep up with the growing number of residents and visitors. The recent purchase of the Foley Beach Express Bridge by the state of Alabama, along with the addition of a new bridge onto the island, should help alleviate some of the increased traffic congestion. However, other challenges still remain.
Worked in partnership with the South Baldwin Regional Medical Center to build a freestanding emergency department for the whole island. We formed a city school system, separated, and we have grown tremendously. It has been an overwhelming success. Intercoastal Waterway had very little access, so we started out and formed a waterway district to create a second coast, so to speak.
But Mayor Kraft emphasizes that as more people choose to visit and settle along Alabama's Gulf Coast, one thing will remain constant: it's Southern hospitality. Reporting from Gulf Shores for Capitol Journal, I'm Jeff Sanders.
A change in seasons will soon be upon us, or at least let's hope so. That comes with colds, COVID, flu, and all kinds of illnesses. But the Alabama Department of Public Health is also raising awareness about bug-based illnesses potentially spread by migrating insects. Capitol Journal's Randy Scott has that story.
COVID, flu, and RSV are on the rise across the nation, right as summer ends and fall begins. As some think about last-minute travel and sporting events, others have safety concerns on their minds.
There is a recommendation from CDC that all individuals 6 months and older stay up to date on both COVID and flu vaccinations Our flu vaccinations are updated every year. Those are not available yet, but they will be soon. And the updated COVID vaccination, which should be available also very soon, is not available yet.
Dr. Wes Stubblefield with the Alabama Department of Public Health says the fight to keep people safe from those illnesses continues.
For each individual family, that's a decision they will make. But we especially want people that are at high risk for complications of those diseases to strongly consider being vaccinated for flu and COVID every year.
A new problem has developed in many regions across the nation. Mosquito-borne illnesses such as Triple E and West Nile virus has hit several communities. There have been several fatalities, and in one case in Missouri, a young man is paralyzed due to West Nile virus. People in Alabama have questions, and the ADPH is introducing a new streamlined online tool to help find answers and tips to stay safe, such as using insect repellent, wearing long-sleeve pants, and long-sleeve shirts for protection.
You can still reach us at adph.org, but our new website is alabamapublichealth.gov, G-O-V. It's a slightly updated name, and we'll be transitioning that fully, so everyone should go there. There's lots of information on there about immunizations, about infectious diseases.
That new website, alabamapublichealth.gov, is up and running. The goal is to help people who are looking to check updates, symptoms information, and new treatments for things they need to know about.
Pretty much anything you can imagine is on our website. Also, CDC is a great place to look for that information as well. So yes, I would suggest heading there, talking to their healthcare provider.
In Montgomery, Randy Scott, Capitol Journal.
News on the political front. Democratic candidate for Congress Shamari Figures this week touted the endorsement of Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed. Figures told reporters that he didn't want to get bogged down in national issues that are dominating the presidential campaign, but rather talk about local issues that residents care about more.
We got in this race from day one knowing that we had to run our own race. But obviously we were not naive to the fact that we're on a ballot with the president. So we've been taking this race locally on the local issues every single day since we got in it. Once there was the change at the top of the ticket, I'll be the first to admit that seemingly what we saw replicated nationwide, there was certainly an enhancement, a significant enhancement in the level of excitement and motivation and inspiration of people wanting to get actively involved in the campaign and wanting to be more engaged directly. We've seen more volunteers signing up to work with the campaign. We've seen more people that want to be out there knocking doors with us, making phone calls with us. And so it was certainly a significant degree of excitement. And I think in large part that ties back to the history of this district. When you look at the role that black women played in the civil rights movement, and to now, here in this home of Rosa Parks, in this district, both home in terms of birthplace over in Tuskegee, as well as home in terms of the works that she's known for nationwide, worldwide. Now having that opportunity to vote for a black woman at the top of the ticket resonates a little bit differently down here.
And of course, Figures' opponent is Republican Caroline Dobson. And the Alabama Republican Party has a prominent speaker coming to town. Laura Trump, the daughter-in-law of the former president and co-chair of the Republican National Committee, will headline the ALGOP's summer dinner here in Montgomery. Donald Trump himself headlined last year's dinner as he was considering another run at the presidency. The party says there will be a reception, dinner, and remarks from other special guests yet to be named. This coming Monday is Labor Day. Here's hoping you get the day off to rest and maybe enjoy some barbecue. Governor Kay Ivey today issued a Labor Day message to Alabamians, celebrating the state's workers. Here's that message.
My fellow Alabamians, today we come together to celebrate the hard work and dedication of our fellow citizens. Labor Day is a time to honor the men and women who have built this state and who continue to move Alabama forward, solidifying us as a powerhouse in our various industries and a leader in innovation. From the brave men and women who protect and serve to the skilled hands that craft our made in Alabama goods, to the educators who shape our future, to the healthcare workers who care for our people. Every Alabamian's contribution is invaluable. Y'all's hard work is the backbone of our prosperity today and tomorrow. Truly, Thank you for all you do, and have a safe and happy Labor Day. May God continue to bless each of you and the great state of Alabama.
We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is Cam Ward, Director of the Alabama Bureau of Pardons and Parole. Cam, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me back, Todd.
Well, you had a really interesting meeting this week. Was it the first meeting of the Alabama Reentry Commission?
That's correct.
I was hoping you could kind of go deeper with us and explain how this commission came about, its purpose, and its goals.
Well, Alabama was the second state in the country after Missouri to join what's called Reentry 2030 as a way to reduce recidivism, those people who are formerly incarcerated, prevent them from going back to prison. And what this commission is composed of is about 12 different agencies, mostly cabinet heads, but as well as private citizens, judges, district attorneys that are involved in coming up with solutions that reduces recidivism in half by the end of this decade. But also, what does that mean? It means coming up with solutions that work to prevent crime from occurring again.
Mm-hmm. So we hear that term, recidivism. That means returning to jail, right? That's the bottom
correct.
line.
The recidivism rate is what happens. Do you go back to prison or jail within 3 years after being released?
Okay.
Our recidivism rate's roughly 29%, which makes us 25th in the country. My goal is to get us in the top 5 best states of reducing recidivism and preventing people from going back to prison.
So what would that goal be? What would the percentage be? What would success look like to you?
I think if we got under 15%, that would be a huge milestone. That would put us ahead of every other state in the Southeast. That would also make us roughly 6th or 7th in the country for recidivism. So it's a big deal because it's public safety. It's public safety 101.
Mm-hmm. I can also see some like economic benefits too, because we've been talking, for a couple of years now about workforce development, workforce participation, things like that. We've talked before about one of the planks of, or one of the, legs to the stool or whatever, however you put it, of keeping folks from reoffending is having a job. And so it seems like there might be some economic benefits as well.
Well, as Secretary of Labor Fitzgerald Washington, who serves on the commission, stated, we have a 57.5% workforce participation rate. That is well below the national average. Mm-hmm. This is a population, and it's been proven over and over. We talk about the three-legged stool,
right.
The three-legged stool of mental health, substance abuse treatment, and job training. Job training, a good, meaningful, working job, will almost guarantee that you don't go back to prison. So that's, but it also complements helping deal with our workforce, lack of a workforce population.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I could see that as well. Well, look, we're in the State House. We're in the government and politics business. This is what we talk, and we're in a very political season right now. And it strikes me that one of the easiest campaign platform planks to have is tough on crime. Mm-hmm. You hear it every year. We'll hear it a lot this year. We'll hear it next time the legislature runs and all the constitutional officers. Everybody wants to be tough on crime. Lock them up, throw away the key, that kind of thing. How does that political reality and political situation jive with the reality of something like recidivism and the importance of keeping folks out of jail?
Well, in the criminal justice system is everyone wants a simple answer to a complex problem, and it's really the criminal justice system is a carrot and stick approach. There does need to be a stick. There needs to be punishment for breaking the law. I mean, there needs to be a payment you got to do. But at the same time, when they come out and 95% of everyone incarcerated today in America comes out, what do you want to look like? They're going to be your neighbor. And I know what I want my neighbor to be like. I want them to get a job, pay their taxes, and don't hurt anybody. So the reason where this comes in, and this is my one piece of the puzzle of the criminal justice issue, is it's being tough on crime, but it's also being smart on crime. We've had someone, I'll give you a great example, a young man came out of Perry County. He went into a welding program, and he's making $85,000 a year. He got his addiction cleaned up, and we're never going to see them again. That's what I want the citizens to look like, because if you don't tackle those issues on their reentry, they're bound to come back in.
Perry County being the facility that
The prep facility in Perry County, and we're very proud of it. Of all the people that have gone through that program, and over 200 have, so far to this date, we've had 0 reoffend and go back to jail. And I think that's a model we can look at and say, that's smart on crime. That's keeping the crime rate down.
Wow, that's awesome. And we've talked about going and maybe doing a tour up there, and also Ingram State and all the things that y'all are doing, because I think maybe it helps to have a visual, not just for our audience, but for lawmakers and everybody, to really get an idea of what's going on. Well, I understand that y'all were awarded an award, a national award recently, the STAR Award. Tell me about this.
So we were the runner-up nationally for the STAR Award, which is an award for innovation in government. And we were second only to North Carolina, which had a school choice initiative for rural areas, which was very good. They wanted to give us an award. We were runner-up on the basically our prep center and how we got innovative in making sure we reduce recidivism. It's the further, Alabama's had 17 different chances to get one of these awards, and we came the furthest along with us. So I think it's awesome, but also what I think is very important to remember is this was something that a lot of states have come to us now and said, we want to replicate, we want to copy that. Can you tell us what you did and how you did it? So now other states are emailing us saying, send us a presentation, send us details on how that works.
That's always nice to hear.
Well, it's good that Alabama's being copied for something good,
something good, yeah, and not just football. Well, look, we're getting into budget season. We're getting into the preliminaries, discussions and hearings that will lead up to budget requests. What goes into that? How do you formulate, because I know costs are still up on inflation and all that kind of stuff. How do you go about preparing for those legislative conversations about next year's budget?
Well, one thing, my agency is 80% is salaries. It's employees and law enforcement officers. We have 830 employees, most of them being law enforcement. However, that's one purpose of the Reentry Commission is what we're discovering is there are things that say the Department of Mental Health is doing, Department of Labor, we're doing Medicaid, DHR, on and on, ALEA, DOC. Maybe we can collaborate in ways that don't require more money. Maybe we can collaborate in ways that don't require new laws. Let's use our existing resources and come up with creative ideas to solve some of these problems without having to ask the legislature for more money when we know the general fund eventually is going to start going down because of interest rate reductions. So I think doing that Reentry Commission helps us a lot on our budgeting, because now again we're sharing ideas and resources, collaborating as opposed to working in silos.
Well, I think Chairman Reynolds and Albritton will appreciate that.
I think they do. I think they already do. Yeah, I think they like that. So.
Absolutely. Well, look, congratulations on your success. We're going to be watching this Reentry Commission going forward, because I do think it's a really important issue. So please come back and keep us abreast.
We would love to. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is Chris Blankenship, the director of the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Reason I want to have you on. But before we get there, remind our audience about the department and all what you do in the state.
So the Department of Conservation is pretty large overall. We have 4 main divisions. We have the wildlife freshwater fisheries, where we do the hunting, fishing. We got 23 state lakes, 40 wildlife management areas, about 750,000 acres of public hunting that we manage. We have all the state parks, all 21 state parks. And then we have the Marine Resources Division down the coast, where we manage all the oystering, crabbing, shrimping, red snapper fishing, seafood dealers, all of that. And then we have our State Lands Division, where we manage state properties, offshore oil and gas leasing, the Forever Wild program, and then we also manage all of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill funding for the state. And right now that's a little bit over $1 billion of projects we have underway in coastal Alabama from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So altogether we got about 1,100 employees. It's a pretty large operation.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot going on right now in the summertime, right? So I was intrigued by this news that the state, your department, has purchased, I guess the equivalent of almost 80 acres worth of beach at Fort Morgan, really to preserve and maybe offer some beach access. Really fascinating. How did this come about?
Well, we're using some of the Deepwater Horizon funding. We've been very intentional about some land acquisition in certain areas. The Fort Morgan Peninsula is one, along the Perdido River is another in Baldwin County. And so we made an acquisition about 2018 of a little over 130 acres, 120 acres between the Beach Club West, the Beach Club condominium, and the plantation down on Fort Morgan. And this is another piece of that, another 79 acres that was adjacent to it. So now we have really the whole block in between the Beach Club and the plantation, right at 200 acres of beachfront property that will now be available for our citizens forever, and makes a good habitat for beach mouse and sea turtles and migratory birds. You know, as they go south and then come back north, they all need that stop and over place, and that dune structure down there is ideal for that, and just a good opportunity for us to acquire that, and very, very pleased that that now belongs to the people of the state of Alabama.
Do you foresee it becoming any kind of state park kind of thing, or is this more to preserve the pristine beach there?
It's a little of both. You know, it will become part of Alabama's Gulf State Park. Down there's just kind of an outside unit of that. We'll have some public access. The parking area will be up closer to Fort Morgan Road with a trail that leads down to the water with an overwalk over the dunes. We'll hopefully start that construction later this year and finish it up in 2025. So we'll have some public access, but the primary purpose was to be able to preserve that so that it can have the habitat benefits and you know, really have an oasis down there, really, in all the development that's taking place in coastal Alabama, which that development is very important for us, for our economy. But we got to preserve green space and blueways and all to keep that quality of life that we've all loved so much. You can't just pave it all. Can't pave paradise. You got to have some nice places left too for the people to enjoy.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, that's why I was excited. You know, we got to preserve what we can. Kind of related, the governor announced a lot of Go Mesa funding projects down there on the coast. I can't list them all, but some really significant funding for some coastal projects. And
you know, I appreciate Governor Ivey coming down about 2 weeks ago to make the announcement of $30 million in Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act, Go Mesa funding, that comes to the state of Alabama. That is a share of the revenues from offshore oil and gas that we manage through the Department of Conservation. And so they're great projects, kind of along three main areas. Nature-based education, have a project at the Explorium, the Maritime Museum of Mobile, at the Dauphin Island Sea Lab, the aquarium down there, and then the Sea, Sand, and Stars over in Orange Beach, plus some work for the University of South Alabama for an outdoor classroom that they're going to do on Aloe Bay and Dauphin Island. Then great water quality projects, some septic to sewer upgrades in some of the communities on both sides of Mobile Bay. And then just some more public access. Public access has been extremely important to the governor and to the department. You know, we've got all this beautiful waterways and areas down there, but we just need to make sure we got boat ramps and parks and waterfront access areas so that people can enjoy that. And those were some more great access projects that she funded again this year.
Boat ramps seem to be a theme throughout the state for the department.
It is. That's been a kind of an initiative that we started about 2 years ago, really wanting to make good boating access from one end of the state to the other. We've got about 30 boating access projects that are either underway or in the permitting stage now that go all the way from the Tennessee River, you know, down through West Alabama. We just completed a project in Selma, the boat ramp in Selma. Got several projects underway in coastal Alabama, and we've got about 6 or 7 that are going to be in that Scottsboro, Gunnersville area on the Tennessee River. And it's just really adding to what we've already had, but then also adding additional parking, additional lanes, so that some of those areas can host tournaments that they've just never been able to do before because they just didn't have the capacity. And
okay, that's part of it, is tourism and things like that.
That's right.
Okay.
And we just completed a project a couple of years ago over in Demopolis, and I still get pictures and text from the mayor and county commissioner over in Demopolis letting us, every time they have a big tournament, he sends me a text and thanks us for our investment over there because it's meant so much to their economy. And Demopolis being able to host these 250 and 300 boat tournaments, and so that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy, working with these local communities to do good things, because not only is it, again, for the quality of life and bringing people to Alabama for the tourism side, but it just means a lot to the economy of those communities.
Well, speaking of that, we're coming up on hunting season, multiple hunting seasons, I suppose. I had Jackie Bushman on the other day as we were approaching the Buckmasters Expo, and he was getting all excited and everything. Talk about what that is like, what kind of seasons are coming up, and isn't that kind of a tourist thing too? Don't people come to Alabama to take advantage of our hunting?
They do. You know, we sell about half of our revenue for hunting license comes from Alabama residents, and about half of our revenue comes from non-residents. We sell a lot less non-resident licenses, but they're more expensive. So, but that's about half of our revenue for the Wildlife Freshwater Fisheries Division of the department. But we have the longest deer season of anywhere in the country. You know, our season starts in October with bow season and runs all the way through February 10th. And we have a very liberal bag limit. You can take a doe a day in most places in the state. So if it's a 120-day long season, you could take 120 does if you went hunting every day. And a 3 buck limit. It's really the resources we have in Alabama are fantastic. You know, we've got a great deer population. The dove season opens up in the north part of the state, coming up, the south part of the state the next week after that. The runs, that's always kind of everybody's first dip into hunting season, as they get to go dove hunting right there around Labor Day.
Okay.
And then it kind of leads them into deer season. And but we're really blessed in Alabama with great habitat, and our department I think has done a very good job of trying to manage these public lands so that people have places to hunt. And then our private landowners, I mean, when you go to West Alabama in the Black Belt, you look at all the deer camps and all the restaurants and the convenience stores and all that they have, they really make a lot of their money during hunting season.
It's their economy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is just like people going to the beach, they make their money during a certain time. Same thing during hunting season. It means a lot to those communities, and it's just, living in Alabama is really, if you're a lover of the outdoors, this is the place.
Absolutely. And it's becoming part of our pitch to the outside world, to come to Alabama, outdoor activities, recreation, all that. And but I really appreciate you coming on to remind us of all these and all the department does. We'll look forward to having you back on maybe later in the hunting season. But Commissioner, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is Dr. Amanda Williams, President of the Medical Association of the State of Alabama. Doc, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Lots to talk about, but I wanted to ask you about your own practice and how you got involved in the MASA leadership.
Yeah, so I'm a psychiatrist here in Montgomery, and I work at a private practice, Gardenia Cove Mental Health. We provide outpatient mental health services. We have a lot of therapists and do groups. And I actually treat a lot of physicians. And so physician wellness has been something that's been very important to me. I think healthcare has kind of taken off, and patients and physicians have kind of been left trying to play the game, even though a lot of medicine has become very corporate. And so it's really important for me to get involved to figure out how can we take care of patients in the best way and recruit more physicians and keep the practice of medicine a great career for the future generations.
Sure. I can imagine I kept hearing about burnout during COVID, and so I imagine
it's a very real thing.
Yeah, mental health was a very important
yes.
thing, maybe overlooked. Well, y'all have just launched this initiative looking at prior authorizations and some of the trouble that causes. What is prior authorization, and why does it matter?
Good question. So a prior authorization is essentially a form or some kind of, now they're mostly online, but online form that physicians and healthcare teams have to fill out or complete for a patient to receive certain services through their insurance company. So it can be for anything from a medication, a diagnostic test like a lab or an imaging study, particular treatments. So certain treatments require prior authorizations, surgeries, it can be an outpatient treatment. And sometimes things like going to a rehab center or follow-up care following the hospitalization can require prior authorizations. So they started You know, way back when insurance companies, you know, certain treatments are very expensive, and so the goal was to make sure that patients met certain criteria for those treatments or diagnostic tests. The problem is it's now morphed into requiring paperwork for very routine medications, routine imaging, routine care. And it causes significant delays in treatment. So it would be nice, you know, it would be one thing if something was submitted and within an hour you get a result. But usually it can take days to get a response, and often it will just be a denial and require an appeal, and then even longer. So it can really slow up treatment, but additionally it's also just very burdensome. I mean, you have a patient who's come in and they're excited to feel better, they're finally getting the treatment that they need or the diagnostic test that they need, and then they're hit with more delays. And then on the provider side, you know, for hospitals, for private practices like mine, it's a big burden. We have, you know, entire staff that their whole job is doing prior authorizations. It's even worse in the hospital systems. So it's just morphed into something I don't think it was intended to be.
I see. Well, okay, so it takes a lot to get me actually into the doctor's office. And so if I need an MRI or just some kind of thing, yeah, I could see that being, man, you finally got me there, and now I've got to go through some paperwork and maybe not get what I need. So I could see that being a deterrent to even getting care.
And it's just very frustrating. I mean, you know, especially because insurance is expensive. You know, we pay a lot of money for insurance, and so we would expect that if a physician writes a medication or feels like we need a particular test or procedure, that we would be able to get it. And so I think from the patient's perspective, it can be very, very disheartening. And they don't always understand, we don't even understand sometimes why we're having to jump through the hoops we're jumping through. And so they can get very frustrated.
Now, let me ask you, you know, if I'm the insurance company, well, I'm taking this is going to be a very expensive procedure. I don't want frivolous claims and things like that. So what about that? I mean, I can see their perspective saying, look, we want to make sure you're actually sick and actually need this treatment before we just go approve anything willy-nilly.
Yes, I think it started probably with the best of intentions. I mean, healthcare is very expensive. And, you know, when it comes to, you know, medications I prescribe, mental health medications, there's some that are on the $4 list, and then there's some that are thousands of dollars a month. And of course, we should try the ones that cost $4 a month first. But now it's morphed into this thing where there'll be a medication that could cost $10 paying cash at Walmart, but we're having to do prior authorizations for patients with insurance to have their insurance company pay. And so it's this back and forth, it's a delay in care, and the whole thing just seems really, really silly. And so I'm not sure how it ended up where it is, but I think it probably did start from a good place of making sure we keep healthcare costs down.
Bureaucracy tends to grow wherever it is.
Yes.
I know you've got a website that you're asking people to come share their stories about prior authorization.
Yes.
Is that AL? There it is.
Yep, alfixpriorauth.com.
Okay. And so folks can go there and maybe share their own stories about how that's affected them?
Yes. So our goal is to gather as many patient stories, physician stories as we can, with the goal of it being impactful for insurance companies when we're trying to fix these problems with them, and for other state leaders. Those individual stories can be very, very powerful.
Yeah. I imagine this conversation is going to crop up in the legislative session when we come back into session.
Well, we're hoping not. We're hoping that, you know, the stakeholders will hear patients and hear physicians, and we'll be able to just make things better.
Okay, fair enough. While I've got you, I wanted to ask you about the physician shortage. I've had several of your colleagues on the show over the years, really the last 3 years this has been going on, and I know that there's been initiatives and proposals put out there. Where are we? How are we doing in terms of the physician shortage, and what do we need to do better?
Well, we are trying really hard in every way we can think of. So we passed legislation last year with a workforce bill that would improve ways for physicians to stay in Alabama, and ideally get more physicians to Alabama. This is actually one of the things that came out of our workforce survey is, what are some of the hurdles that physicians are facing? What are reasons that they're wanting to leave the practice of medicine? What are some of the reasons they're reducing their clinical hours? And so we're trying in a lot of different ways. I think Alabama on a whole, luckily we've increased our medical schools here, so we're creating more young physicians. One of the things that I think we need to continue to work on is how do we keep them here with residency programs. There's caps on residencies, so for physicians you have to first go through medical school, which is 4 years, and then do a residency, which is anywhere from 3 to 7 years, and then sometimes a fellowship. And so ideally these young physicians we're training here, which takes a lot of effort and money and resources, will have residency spots where they can then stay. So that's something that we're working on as well. You know, I think honestly reimbursement rates in Alabama are hard to compete with reimbursement rates in Tennessee and in Georgia. So when we're trying to recruit physicians from other states.
This is Medicaid reimbursement?
Kind of across the
Medicare,
board.
okay.
For Medicare, Medicare are standard rates, but Alabama has a lower rate than other states. Some of our larger payers here, the rates just kind of are what they are. I think sometimes people don't understand that in healthcare, you know, physicians and hospitals, they're just paid what the insurance companies say they'll pay. And so in Alabama, if there's not a lot of room to negotiate, it makes it where it's hard to recruit physicians from other states. So one of the things that our survey found actually is most physicians in Alabama have never considered leaving. They love working here, they love their patients, they love what they're doing, but it's so hard for them to get new physicians from other states. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do to incentivize, you know, other excellent physicians to come here.
Well, we've got the healthcare high school going up.
Yes.
So that's a longer term thing.
We're hoping that's a good pipeline. We're
maybe
trying
so.
in all the ways we can.
There you go.
All the ways we can.
We're going to be following this issue going forward, but I really appreciate you coming on and explaining it. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, I appreciate being here. Thanks for your time.
We'll be right back.
Since 1997, Alabama Public Television has provided programs, services, and resources to child care professionals, teachers, and parents. Visit aptv.org/education to learn more.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is Mike Oatridge, Executive Director of the Alabama Mobility and Power Center. Mike, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, could you share with our audience more about the AMP? That's what you call it, right?
Yeah. So the AMP Center was established about 2 years ago, and it was originally a partnership between Alabama Power, the University of Alabama, and Mercedes-Benz, and really looking at the research and development requirements to really seize the opportunities of economic development as we move towards electrification in the transportation industry.
So we're talking about electric vehicles, EVs. It's such a, watchword these days. It's a huge part of the market, an emerging part of the market. There was a big push here in the state to get more power charging stations. It's still a big infrastructure thing. So tell me, what is the current state of the market in terms of EVs? Is this a real thing? Is this going to be part of the auto industry from here on out?
Yeah, I think that's a great question in a lot of ways because there is a lot of misperceptions about electric vehicles. I think the first one is really around charging and charging infrastructure. So the way I always broach that subject is, I'm sure you drive an ICE vehicle or an internal combustion engine. If you had a gas pump at your house, how often would you go to the gas station?
Not very often.
And that's what it's like having an electric car. You come home, you plug your car in, you wake up in the morning, it's fully charged. My car has about a 400-mile range. I can drive almost anywhere all day long, come home and charge it. You're only going to use those superchargers, the ones that you hear, the horror stories. It took me 30 minutes to charge when you're on a long trip, when you're exceeding that range. So when you think about that, if you're on your way down to the beach and you've got all your stuff and your family in your car, I'm pretty sure every time you stop, it's 15 minutes at least anyway.
Right.
So I think once people own an electric car, they realize it's not the same as a gas vehicle where you're going to the gas station continuously. Most of the time you're charging at home, and a lot of time you're charging at work.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about research, because that's what y'all are doing, is research and its impact and how that can impact the EV industry.
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the industry and work backwards.
Okay.
So Benchmark just came out, and their most recent estimates are there will be $1.6 trillion of CapEx invested into EV and EV infrastructure, battery materials, battery manufacturing in the United States by 2040. Alabama makes up about 8 to 9% of all the auto production in the United States. So we should get 9% of that $1.6 trillion is the way I look at it. So over $100 billion of CapEx we should be going after for this state. But to do that, we have to have a trained and available workforce that really doesn't exist. And we have to have the infrastructure, that research infrastructure, to allow those companies to have access to pieces of equipment and to expertise that maybe they don't have on their own staffs. So the Alabama Mobility and Power Center is really set up to do research for two main reasons. One, to drive innovation. I mean, that's easy to say, it's really hard to do. Driving innovation requires, that you have the skills and the expertise. It also requires some luck. But while doing that research, we're going to gain a lot of knowledge into the battery industry, into the automotive industry as it relates to EVs, and through that, be able to develop curriculum from K through 12, 2-year and 4-year colleges, and build that workforce that makes, once that's completed, Alabama is the go-to place because we have the existing auto industry and we'll have the existing workforce.
Well, that's fascinating. And I know you're part of the Alabama Transportation Institute there at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. I did some work with them back when we were talking about infrastructure and gas tax and things like that, and it was super helpful, all of the research that it's not willy-nilly. They do years and years of research, so I can see that. Y'all aren't just taking this from where it is right now or where it has been. You're looking way into the future.
That's correct, and I think there is that policy side. So there's research. We have basically 4 main research areas. One of them has to do with EV adoption. So if you ask anybody in the industry, do they believe the adoption curve? Or actually you ask anybody, do you believe the adoption curve? The answer is usually no. So the problem is that adoption curve is based off of regulations, so CAFE regulations, which require automakers to have a fleet sales average of 54 miles per gallon by 2025. So the car companies did everything but electrify. And they did, made the panels of your car super thin. They put on that idle stop switch that a lot of people don't like. They did a lot of things, but at some point you have to electrify to hit those targets. So that requires battery technology, that requires charging technology, that requires all of those things. But on top of, before we can really understand how fast that market's going to grow, we have to understand what that market growth looks like. So we have undertaken to try and predict EV consumer adoption based off of consumers. So if gas was 20 bucks a gallon, would you think about an electric car?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if there was a lot of chargers around everywhere you went and weren't worried about finding a charger, would you be more likely? Of course. So we look at about 8 or 10 different factors, and from that we can fairly accurately predict the growth of the EV market. By doing that, now we get timing and quantity. That allows us to understand things like how much graphite do we need, how much lithium do we need, how many battery manufacturing facilities do we need, and then what is that workforce that goes along with it.
Yeah. Well, talk about that workforce issue, because that's across the board in industry right now. Every industry is looking for workers. We have a workforce participation rate that's really low. Talk about the future of workforce and how that needs to change to supplement, to complement the EV industry.
Sure, and I think we have to understand what the strengths of our state are and what the weaknesses of our state are. Maybe they're not weaknesses, but when you think about a battery factory like Tesla's Gigafactory out in Nevada, it's a couple thousand acres of flat land. I just excluded most of Alabama because we're hilly.
Yeah.
But what we
got
do,
a lot of trees.
Yeah,
too.
a lot of trees as well. But to build a battery, there are many processes from the extraction of graphite, for example. So a lot of people don't understand graphite is the main component in a lithium-ion battery. So it's about 35% of the weight of the battery. Lithium's about 3% of the weight of the battery. Alabama has the largest deposit of graphite in the lower 48 states, in Coosa County.
Yeah, up there in Coosa County.
Yeah. So, for example, that's how we're looking at workforce. Those are rural communities where processing of that graphite to feed into this global battery industry is a great opportunity for this state. So now we're looking at what are the skills and knowledge base that's required to really make that industry flourish. But on top of that, we also have lithium. We didn't know we had lithium. Lithium comes out of the Smackover Basin that runs from Arkansas all the way into Alabama, and we're extracting lithium by using water membrane technology. So lots of job opportunities, maybe not what people think like building the car, but providing the materials and providing that domestic supply of materials to that battery industry.
is really where I think this state can flourish.
Fascinating stuff, and we'll be following up. Mike Oatridge of the Alabama Mobility and Power Center, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on Friday, a special treat awaits you coming up next. Alabama Public Television presents Engage, Getting the Vote Right. Veteran Alabama journalist Pam Huff will moderate a conversation between Jonah Minkoff-Zern of Public Citizen and Hans von Spakowski of the Heritage Foundation. They're going to be debating issues around voter registration, including the ballot harvesting discussion that has taken place in this state recently. That's coming up next and will also be available on our website at aptv.org. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.